What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. Tonight's show is brought to you in part by Prairie Sky Recovery Center, the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, the Community Addictions Peer Support Association, Stronger Together Canada peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm, and Carter's Counseling. Tonight's guest, person in recovery, Shane H. from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, is here to share his story and how he found the meaningful life he has today, and we are going to hear from him right after this. New music.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years, I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work, and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knox Talks.
I still haven't landed on solid theme music yet. I'm still working on it. Let me know what you think in the chat. And while you're doing that, let's bring in Shane. What's up, my friend?
Not much. What's up with you, man?
Oh, I'm just busy making a scene over here in the countdown.
Making a scene.
Yeah.
I thought that music was okay.
It was all right. I try to switch it up. Is there Is there anything that you'd like to say before we get started tonight?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on your show, for asking me to be here. Second of all, I guess I would like to say to anyone out there who's struggling right now, who feels hopeless, who feels like, they're at the end of the road, or like there's no options. There are options, right? And I just want you to know that you're not alone, and there's definitely lots of resources out there. Recovery is possible. I also wanted to say that anything that I understand, I saw the disclaimer that Daniel has at the start of the show, and I'd like to reiterate that for myself, that any of the opinions or anything that I say is solely my opinion, and doesn't reflect, any of the sponsors or any 12-step programs or anything like that. It's solely my opinion. So that's all I'd like to say to start.
Right on, brother. Let's go. So, why don't you tell us what it was like growing up?
Sure. So, like Dan said, my name's Shane. I live in Saskatoon. I've lived here most of my life. And I think really importantly, through the last 15 years of recovery, I've come to learn some of the key, important things about growing up that kind of led me to addiction, or really, helped me to become an addict, or whatever you want to call it. And, so I grew up, I was raised by a single mother. I was an only child. And, I can remember from such a young age, and I've heard it so many times from other people in recovery, right? But I identify with this fact that I just felt like I was always different, right? And, so that growing up, having that feeling of being alone and being different from other kids, it put me in kind of in a place that I didn't know how I felt. Right. And, so, from a young age, I kind of acted out and I started doing voices and I liked TV a lot. And, um, so, uh, what else can I say? Right. Like growing up, I moved around a little bit and, I can remember I think I was in grade 3 and we were living on the west side of the city and, my mom wanted something different for me. Right. So we moved to a nicer area and it was difficult. Right. I know like already I had this feeling of like, of being different from all these other kids and kind of weird. And I like to tell this story sometimes. I remember I was this is before we moved. I was in grade 2 or something like that. And I wanted to be a businessman when I grew up. And I wore a suit to school one day and I had this little briefcase, right? And I can distinctly remember this girl. She was older, probably, I don't know, like grade 6, grade 7. She was older than me. And she stops me in this stairwell and she says, "Why are you dressed like that?" And I remember looking up at her and I just said, "Because I'm a businessman." Right. And like, I have tons of stupid little stories like that from when I was a kid, but this is the kind of stuff that I was just different. Right. Another thing that I identify with, and this is big when it comes to, being an addict and how the whole world of addiction and using works is that I remember that from a very young age, I learned how to manipulate people, right, to get what I wanted. And again, going back to the single mother, only child, like I was kind of spoiled in that way, right? Like I just remember so many times that it was very much like, fine, have the fucking thing, right? Like, because I would just bitch and complain until I got what I wanted. And when I was little, it was whatever toy, it was that little car in the store or whatever. So fast forwarding, I was in French immersion and we moved to the north end of town. And I remember being kind of the poor kid in a rich school. Right. And again, that just compounded that feeling of like difference. Right. I remember, this was back in the day of Zellers, and my mom took me shopping before school one year and she says like, "Okay, well, you can have 3 pairs of these Zellers pants," or whatever it was. And I knew like right then, I'm like, no, man, if I wear Zellers pants to school, I'm going to be that fucking, that kid or whatever. So I settled for like one new pair of pants from, I don't remember what it was, some jeans store that was,
Buffalo.
The jean shop or something like that. I don't know if it was Buffalo. Yeah, maybe. But so that kind of like that seeking approval from people and that wanting to kind of fit in, like that really became a narrative in my life from really young. Right. And yet knowing, like having this dichotomy in my head, right, where I'm trying to fit in and I'm trying to blend in, but at the same time inside, I know I'm so much fucking different. Like it's like, there's a common saying in recovery, which is like, if you knew what the fuck was going on in my head, you'd lock me up or whatever. And I think I experienced that from really young. Right. Because I was always doing voices and stuff, and I still do today, but I've come to terms with that kind of shit. Right. Like I know I'm weird to other people, but to me, like I'm just expressing myself in a way that's comfortable for me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, getting back into the story here, right?
Were there
go
ever
ahead.
any,
Were you going to ask something?
Yeah. Were there ever any male role models in your life growing up?
Oh yeah. We can talk about that for sure. So, growing up without a dad, again, right? Like I've said, compounding this feeling of difference. I can remember being really young too. And people asking me, like, "Where's your dad?" And, so humor was always kind of an outlet for me where I would just make jokes of everything. And that still kind of persists today. But, someone would ask me like, "Oh, where's your dad?" And I'd say he's dead. Right. With this like straight face. And they'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "Well, you didn't kill him." Right. Like I can remember being 4 or 5, 6 years old. Yeah. Or did you? I don't know. Right. But so I had a few somewhat strong male role models in my life, but they weren't super consistent, right? Like my grandpa, I really looked up to, but I mean, they lived in North Battleford, so I had an uncle on the farm that we would go and visit, and a couple of older cousins, right? But I always like sought that male attention, that fatherly kind of thing, that's a big thing I think for me with using, right? Like when we get into using, is that we're looking for something that we never had, right? It's always that seeking, I want more, or whatever it is that we couldn't get or we didn't have, right? So regardless of what it is. So yeah, I had some male role models growing up, nothing that, there was no one consistent ever. And, but I believe,
did you make friends easy in
friends,
school?
Yeah. I would always make friends really easy in school, but having friends that lasted was another story. Right. And, I was always kind of the notorious kid. I don't know about popular so much. Like everyone knew me, but I don't know that everyone liked me. And I would cycle through usually a best friend a year. Right. And it almost seemed to me like it was like, once someone kind of got too close, or, there was that level of friendship intimacy that kind of starts happening with a best friend. Right. I never had a best friend throughout all of school or whatever it was. So, yeah, again, like just that feeling of lonely, feeling of being different. And I can't say that enough, that was a big, huge thing, always kind of in the back of my head, that really drove me to act the way I acted and do a lot of the things that I did. So,
yeah. So we were talking the other day, and you mentioned that there was this point where you were invited to one of your friends' birthday parties, and you showed up to this house filled with abundance. Tell us a little about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like I said, coming from, not a whole lot, and having my mom scraping together for us. And I mean, we never completely went without, right? Like I remember I always had food. Like, it's not like I starved or I couldn't afford clothes and shit like that. Right. Like my mom did a really good job of taking care of me, but I always felt like I didn't have enough. And I remember when I went to this kid's birthday party, I think it was grade 4 or 5 or 3, something like that. And both of his parents were optometricians or something, like eye doctors. And so I'm at this party, and his mom's like, "Oh, can I get you guys something to drink?" And I always think of that. I don't know, for anyone who's seen Dave Chappelle, the skit where he's talking about orange drink, right? Like I can identify with that, because like I was that kid that was like, "Where's the orange drink?" Right? And she opens this fridge, and I'm like, "Holy shit, man! Like this thing's fucking full. Like, how do you even close the fridge? Like it was so full of stuff." And just, again, like I was just like, fuck, I can't believe people live like this. Like, this is insane. That, some of my closest family, I had an auntie who, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but she was in a real shit situation, and she got out of that, but she got out of it with, herself and 4 boys. And so we would go over there, and I was the halves in that situation. Right. I think I was kind of the spoiled little, only child fucking cousin, and they had not much. So I didn't really have a huge example of that, of like, going to someone's house and they got marble fucking tile all over the place and things like that. So it really blew me away. And
did it change the way you looked at your life?
Oh, for sure. Right. Like, I mean, I already knew that I kind of came from this place of like, I know today what my mom's intentions were in moving us to this like better neighborhood and things like that, right? Like to give me, a better education or whatever it was. I'm not, going to say exactly what it was, but having these people in my classes, and I don't know if I would call them friends, weren't really close, but they're talking about going on ski trips and things like that, right? And fuck, man, I heard about that stuff, and I would cop resentments, and I'd be like, oh, like I'd have that like anarchist kind of attitude towards rich people. I'm like, fuck you, you're gonna go on a ski trip. Like, I don't care about your stupid ski trip. Meanwhile, inside, I'm thinking like, I don't want to go on a fucking ski trip. Like, I want to learn how to snowboard, right? And that just adds to that like self-hatred, that like, why the fuck am I not good enough? Like, what's wrong with me that I don't get to have a dad, that I don't get to fucking go on a ski trip, I don't get to do this stuff. And that stuff, and that thought process, that thinking really fucking got heavy when I was about 8 or 9 years old, right? And from the time I was really, really little and started asking, you know, where's my dad? Because like I'm in kindergarten, grade 1, and other kids, they have dads, and they're like, oh, my dad this, my dad that. And I'm like, well, what the fuck's that? And so, you know, I'm constantly asking. And again, like anytime I talk about my relationship with my mom openly, like in recovery rooms or wherever it is, I always want to put a disclaimer, like, because I would never, I had a big resentment against my mom for a long time. And I know now that any of the things that she did were in my best interest, right? As best as she knew. And so she told me when I was growing up that my dad died in a fire, right? And to make sure that people didn't, you know, knew that he wasn't a fireman, that he was a postman, but he died in a fire. And so that's kind of what I rolled with, right? And until I was about 9 years old, and I was rooting through a purse like any 9-year-old does. I was trying to find money or candy, I don't fucking know. Mm-hmm. And I come across this news article, right? And it says Calgary man commits suicide in garage, and there's a fire in the house and all this stuff. And so I brought it to her and I said, well, who's this? And, you know, she sat me down, and it was a real, I remember like it was, you know, and she says, well, that was your dad. Right. And I said, well, it says he committed suicide. Right. And instant fucking resentment, man, instant resentment. And that's kind of where some of the shit changed for me. Right. Because before that, I wasn't, you know, I was kind of innocent, naive. Like I was happy just playing with toys by myself until I was 9. You know what I mean? Like in my make-believe world and shit like that. And at that point, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So like, you've been lying to me my whole life, right? And I realize now, like, I get it, man. Who wants to tell a 3-year-old, oh, well, your dad committed suicide, like he killed himself.
Yeah.
But as soon as I learned that, like, it was almost like his fucking switch turned on, and I was like, he killed himself because of me, right? Immediately, like, that's what I thought, man. Fuck, this guy wanted to kill himself because I'm a piece of shit and I'm useless, and I'm fucking 9 years old, right? Mm-hmm. So their shit started to spiral. And like, I can remember looking back, like talking to my mom about when I was younger, and she's like, yeah, you were really quiet, like pretty good kid until you were, oh, whatever, I don't know, 8 or 9. And maybe neither of us put 2 and 2 together till that point. But it's kind of like, I've looked at this stuff enough now that I know, like, these are the points that really a lot of shit changes, right?
Yeah. So how old were you the first time you got loaded?
Well, I was 12, right? So it only took 3 years for me to find substance. And I mean, even at that point, so 9 years old, right around that time, I had my first cigarette, right? It was a buddy stole a cigarette from his brother. And I can remember us sitting on the picnic bench, like in his backyard or something, and smoking this cigarette. And I'm like, and he's like, oh, we're fucking rebels, man. And I'm like, oh yeah. You know, like, I'm fucking cool. And like, I can't drop the shit now. So it's like, if I could go back there and put myself over my knee and say no, you know, like, I would do it. But so I was 12 the first time I used.
How was it?
My older cousin it was amazing, man. Like, I'm not even gonna fucking lie. Like, it was great.
Well, of course, the first time had to be amazing. Why would we keep going?
Oh yeah, you know, it was fun, man. It was. I had a huge glass of wine, and it was a fucking party. These older kids, and I acted like a complete fucking idiot, right? Like, just got like hammered off 1 glass of wine, and the biggest thing is, I remember like how I talked about like that approval seeking, right? Like, that's been a big thing for me, right? And immediately, as soon as I was stumbling around and doing voices and acting like a character, all these people were laughing at me, right? Yeah. And I swear the narrative in my head was like, they're laughing with me, I'm cool, like, these are gonna be my fucking friends. And you know, the sad truth is that 90% of the time when I was fucked up and I was making people laugh, they were laughing at me, right? Not necessarily with me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a part of the illusion of using, right? Is that we think that we're fucking stronger, we think we're faster, we think we're smarter, we think we're funnier. Yeah. Really, we're just, you know, we're funny because we're falling down and fucking acting like idiots, right? And
so were you all in after that?
You know, that no, definitely not. You know, like it's not like I was a complete. Yeah, I was 12, so I mean, I was all in a sense, I would say, because like it was right around that time when, like I said, things started to spiral. Right, that 9 years old, finding all that shit out, and then kind of like getting into like smoking cigarettes and then the drinking. It was grade 7, so it was shortly after that 12 years old when I was in this school, right, and I was in French immersion, and I don't remember the exact incident, but I remember the day that I tell this story, and I always have to be careful because it's not like I was a Hulk. Like I'm not a Hulk now. I'm a small guy, right? And it's not like I picked the desk up and threw it at the fucking teacher, but I did my best to like toss this desk towards my teacher, and I called her a fucking cunt, right? Mm-hmm. And immediately I left the classroom, and I just went and sat by myself in this corner, and I was like, what the fuck did I do? Right. But at the same time, still angry and like just so much anger inside, man. So much fucking anger inside. I didn't know what to do with it. And so all these kids got sent out of the class to go look for me, and month later, they send us, or I don't even know if it was a month. They sent a psychiatrist in, and they diagnosed me ADHD. And I remember that too. They gave me the Rorschach test and all this stuff. And I was immediately put on like, I have 60 milligrams or 65 or 70 milligrams a day of fucking Ritalin.
That's a lot of Ritalin, man.
That's a lot of fucking Ritalin for a 12-year-old, 13-year-old.
That's a lot for anyone.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, it was like 3 pills and a fucking. And I remember when the doctor told me, like, here, take this codeine at night so you can sleep. And I had no fucking clue, man. I'm 13, 14. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to, and I'll go all over the place here because whatever. I talked to a psychologist, a year and a half ago, because I think it's good to find, like therapy and outside help and any kind of. So I'm talking to this therapist, and I was telling her a bit about my story, and she just stops me after I tell her that, and she goes, "Well, no fucking wonder you smoked so much crack, man. Like, no wonder you had to find something to match that like level of, right?" So, and I can't say that any one of these things contributed to me being an addict or whatever. It's just, it's a culmination of things, and it's how life plays out, I think, really. But so, high school, like my story is no different from most people's story. Typical shit, right? I found people who wanted to buy those pills, and so I started selling them, and I quickly got busted for that, and not like police wise, like going to jail wise. It was more just like, how come there's 5 pills missing, or how come there's fucking, what's going on here? And I got taken off the meds, and I think that's kind of too where I started really seeking, because I can remember teachers being like, "Shane, you didn't take your pill today." Right? Like they could tell.
Yeah.
And there was a few instances that I can remember where there was older kids in my class who were the badasses or whatever, who were doing dope and shit like that. And I was, I'd do what I could to impress them and make them laugh. And so that kind of started these connections that I had with people, and I started getting my hands on dope. So I started doing like, it just kind of progressively got harder. Right.
Yeah. And you got kicked out of school too, right?
Oh, multiple times. Yeah. Multiple times. Yeah. I got kicked out of that grade 7 class when I threw that desk at that teacher. They diagnosed me, and I immediately went to a different elementary school that had what was called an integrated program. And it's funny because like us addicts, like we have the potential to be some of the most intelligent people on the planet. And when we set our minds to something, right? So like I was regimented on the Ritalin at that point. It was doing something, I guess, for me, like zoning me out or whatever. But I integrated out of that program faster than they said anyone had ever integrated out before. So, kind of interesting that I just was like, I don't fucking want to be here. And so I put my mind to it, and I went, right.
So when did your using really start to escalate?
Yeah. Like I said, like high school was really kind of and I think it is, high school is like a gateway, right? Like they all say, like everyone says, oh, alcohol is the gateway, or marijuana is the gateway. I think high school is the fucking gateway, man, because that's where I was introduced to acid and mushrooms and even cocaine, right? Like parties and older kids and shit like that. And so I experimented a lot in the 8 years I was in high school. And I went to 4 or 5 different high schools. And, you know, when I was 17, I got a girl pregnant. And that was the same year that subsequently, like oddly enough, that my grandma was dying, right? So it was a really tough time in my house with my mom and I, right? Like she was going back and forth from Saskatoon, North Battleford, and like my grandpa was all fucked up over it. And my grandma's really, really sick. And, you know, I remember when I told my mom, I'm like, you know, and I was such a little asshole back then, like nonchalant little, like she comes home and she's obviously like really struggling with this shit. And I was just like, oh yeah, by the way, Amanda's pregnant. And and that was one of the first times, right? Like that I saw her like, she just kind of had this blank stare in her face. And she just said, I don't want to fucking deal with this, man. And she just went, right. And it, like, when I think of that today, I think back on that. And like, even then, like I had that feeling, like that sinking heart feeling, like, oh man, I'm such a piece of shit, right? Like I'm so like mean to people, like just whatever. But hey, let's go get fucked up, because that makes those feelings go away. Like, let's not think about that feeling. Let's go get fucked up and be happy or be forgetful or whatever it is. So, yeah, you know, like as soon as that happened, like I was spiraling out of control. I wasn't working. I wasn't in school. Like I got kicked out of school, shortly after I found out that, that girl was pregnant, you know, with my daughter. And, so I got sent to an auntie and uncle's place, and I was 17, right? So I was right on that cusp. I could have probably fucking just said, you know, and walked away, but I knew I'd be homeless and I had no idea how to take care of myself. Right. So I, you know, I went, and I didn't do too bad at that school. There wasn't, you know, I was in a school with 56 students from kindergarten to grade 12, and no real available drugs or anything, and really limited access to the outside world. So we called it the prison farm. And you know, so the same year my grandma died, my daughter was born. But even still, you know, when I left that farm and I came back to the city, like nothing changed, right? Like I never did any actual work. I never changed anything. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's really the point, like that 18, 19-year-old range, where I could sit here and try and fucking put timelines together for you. Basically, I know where I was based on what car I was driving. Like that's how fucked up it is, eh? Like the timeline is just skewed at that point.
You ever have any like suicidal thoughts around this time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You know, like I had suicide attempts from the time I was probably 15, 16, right? Pretty young. And, of course, you know, like I said, I had this idea in my head from the time I was 9 that I was just a piece of shit, that someone would literally kill themselves because I entered the world. Like, you know, it's bizarre. Like this thinking, this fucking disease, man, it's bizarre. And like I've said it, I say it lots, and I've said it before and whatever, like this brain, sometimes it just wants to fucking kill me. It wants me dead. And that was definitely the case. Yeah. Like I've had multiple suicide attempts where, you know, and some of them, I don't know if they were actual 100% attempts. Like there were more cries for help, you know, and, like notice me or help me in some fucking way. And I just think that I never had someone who knew how to help me properly in the right way. Yeah. I know, you know, my mom tried having an intervention one time. I don't remember how old I was, with all my aunties at the table. Right. And I walked up and I kind of sat down, immediately got pissed off. And I said, well, go fuck yourself. Right. I'm not going to a treatment center. Drugs aren't the problem. You're the fucking problem. Right. I just leave. Yeah. Right. It's kind of that was kind of a running fucking thing in my life, right? Drugs aren't the problem. I'm not the problem. You're the fucking problem.
So what did you do after high school?
Oh, I fucking mulled about and really, I mean, like I said, I was in high school for 8 years. So I would work here and there. I'd go back and take a couple classes or whatever it was. But it was really, I think I was about 19. So before I was actually done high school, I was introduced to a substance, crystal meth. And fuck, that took up like the next 4 years of my life, man.
So you ended up
I think
in
it was
Calgary,
around 19. Like I said, I ended up in Calgary after that. Yeah, like I was trying to hold a job here from like 19 to 23. I had a few jobs working in kitchens as a dishwasher, this, that, the other thing. And eventually, yeah, I moved to Calgary with a guy who in grade 12 told me, no, I'm not going to use anymore. I'm not going to get drunk. I'm not going to party. I'm not going to get fucked up. I got to go to university and make a life. Right now.
And
this is like grade 11 to grade 12. Yeah. Oh, he did. He totally did. Yeah. But I can remember sitting there being like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right.
Sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds stupid. But yeah. So like when it came down to it and he was done university, he needed a roommate in Calgary. So, free ride. And I was fucked up and I wanted to get off that stuff. So I said, sure. So, I moved to Calgary with him, but again, right. Geographical cure. Like, I mean, I went to Calgary, but I went to Calgary. So everywhere we go, there we are. Like one of my favorite sayings, because that was exactly what I thought was going to happen. I just had to leave this shit city and these shit people and this shit fucking drug and everything would be cool. And I could go live some kind of normal fucking life. And when I got to Calgary, I almost immediately found another dude who was, goofy and act fucking crazy and wanted to smoke crack. And I was like, hey, I did that once or twice. Right. And let's try that. And so, there's the next 4 years of my life was diving into this fucking underworld in Calgary, running dope around and fucking getting in, man, like, getting in like police raids and shit like that. And it was just intense for me, like coming from Saskatoon and being a basement dweller, like when I was here using, I didn't give a fuck about the dealers. I didn't give a fuck about any, like, I didn't want the prestige or the fucking dope or the blah, blah, blah. I just wanted the drugs. Right. And as soon as I moved to Calgary, it was almost like that stuff was like brought to me because I had some legitimate stuff. I had a legitimate vehicle with a legitimate plates and a legitimate license. And, dope dealers love that shit because, it's legitimate. Right. Yeah. So, I got wrangled in there pretty easy. And,
do you have a girlfriend?
So, well, yeah, I saw a few people, but like near the end of my using there, in Calgary, I was squatting, in this girl's place that I knew and we had dated before. And again, with manipulation, right? Like I can remember some of the shit that I thought in my own head. Like she worked a full-time job, went off to work, and I'm bringing in like some shit EI check. And I remember one time I went to the food bank and I'm like, and I brought home all this fucking yogurt and like some of the arguments, right? Like she'd be like, you don't fucking contribute. Like, what are you even doing here, man? And I'm like, well, fuck, I put this yogurt in your fucking fridge, right? Like from the food bank. Like how fucking delusional, man. How fucked up was I, right? Like, I had just I was like staying in my truck before she let me fucking stay at her place, like living in this fucking 1985 Chevy half ton for like weeks, right? Like what the fuck, man? So, I'm not going to say like, there was a point there, right? And that wasn't the moment you're looking for, Dan. I know what moment you're looking for here, and that wasn't quite it, right? That was definitely a big moment for me, right? Yeah. Was where I was standing there. It was 2007, and I think I looked at my bank account. I got $80 or $60 in my fucking bank account, and there's this drug dealer who was telling me I was stepping on his fucking toes and cutting his grass, and he's going to drive some car through this fucking girl's basement apartment window and I'm going to fucking die and all this stuff. And I'm like, something in my head said, man, you get the fuck out of Calgary. You're going to die. Like that was it. And I remember calling my mom and I'm like, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to fucking die. And I don't know if she thought, that seriously, that it was like, okay, but she took on the mom role, right? And I'm 27, and she's like, if you come home, there's going to be rules, and you're going to have to follow them. And I'm like, fuck, whatever. Yeah, just get me home, right? And not willing to fucking look at the actual issues yet. So fast forward, another month, and I keep using, and I'm doing this some kind of day program, outpatient day program, and trying to appease the mom or whatever, but still doing the softer subs, still drinking, still smoking weed, and and she's like naggy, like, oh, are you sure you smoke weed? Like, don't you have a drug problem? It's just with crack. Like, fuck off, right? Anyway, so I go to this party and I get fucking wasted, man. And I can't remember why. I don't know why, but I had this huge resentment. I was angry. Like I said, like I've always had this fucking anger inside me, man. And sometimes I'll find any little excuse to let it out. And so I come home from this party and I got some beer left, and something was pissing me off, and I smashed some shit all over the kitchen, went downstairs, and I decided I was just going to fucking end it. So I chugged as many of these fucking beers as I could. I found a bottle of T3s, and I took them, right? Like, I don't know, 10, 15 of these fucking pills. And one of the reasons I know that, like, I don't think it was 100% a fucking another attempt, right? Like, maybe in that moment I wanted to die, but there's something, again, was inside me saying, man, look what the fuck are you doing? And so I started calling people, hey, and I called a few people to say, goodbye or whatever it was. And I happened to call this one friend that I'd had for a very long time, who was kind of an in and out of my life and stuff. And, I just told her, I said, Liz, I love you. And she's like, where the fuck are you? What are you doing right now? I'm coming to get you. And her and her husband, like, drove over as fast as they could. They called an ambulance, right? And yeah, I basically saved my life that night. So, the best thing my mom ever did for me, and maybe this could be, the turning point of my life, really seriously, was my mom told me, get the fuck out. I was in the hospital all night. I felt like shit, and I was feeling real sorry for myself, man. I was feeling real sorry for myself. And I came out of there, and I'm just like, just let me fucking sleep, man. Just let me stay here one more day. And she's like, no, get the fuck out of my house. Like, you got to go. You have to go. And so I packed up my backpack and I fucking left, right? And I can remember walking down the street, and I'm like, it's 31 degrees. It's like August. And I'm like, where the fuck am I going to go, man? And so, I knew something had to change, but I still wasn't willing to change it. I still wasn't willing to change it. And I found this I found a guy that I could, that I knew from high school, was willing to let me stay on his couch. And so we're sitting there, and we're getting high one day. And this is my one of my favorite stories about recovery, like about my story, is like, we're sitting there one day, and he gets this phone call, and he says, oh, this buddy of mine from wherever is going to fucking show up, and he's going to stop by for a sec. That this guy that he used to work with, and he's this kid, like 18 years old or something. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So he comes down, and we're smoking a joint, and we offer him some. And I'll never fucking forget this. This kid, he's like 18, eh? And he says, well, no, I don't have to do that anymore. And I remember laughing. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Right? Like, what? And so somehow, he managed to, like, get me into his car, and we're going to the hood to pick up his girlfriend or something like this. And she's not at this apartment. So we end up in front of this church, and he says, oh, just come and meet these people. They're really cool. And like, I'm thinking the whole time, like, what the fuck am I doing here, man? I don't know this kid. Like, why? Right. But while we were in the car, I was trying to tell him how hard I was, like all these people that I knew, like this fucking dealer in Calgary, and yeah, blah, 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 blah. I knew all these fucking, and all he said to me, he looks at me and he says, it sounds like you have a problem and you need help. I'm like, again, I'm just baffled by this kid. And so, that was that night. Like, I was standing outside this church, and and I just felt broke, man. Like I felt like a piece of shit. I didn't know, like my life was just garbage. And like I felt like a piece of shit. Like I just didn't know. I didn't know like what was coming next. You know what I mean? And this guy walks by me and he looks me in the eye and he shakes my hand and he says, you know, is this your first meeting? I'm like, I guess so. And he says, welcome. And keep coming back. Like so sincere, man. Like I almost made me start crying in that moment. And so when this kid said, just come downstairs and hear what these people have to say for like 5 minutes, right? I went downstairs and I can remember like just judging the shit out of these people that were sitting in this fucking church basement on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. on a summer, you know, evening. And at one point, everyone just stops and they're looking at me and they're like, read that reading, right? So I picked it up and I read it, and it was the most honest, fucking relatable shit that I ever read in my life, man. And I almost couldn't finish the reading. And that was the turning point, right? That was the fucking turning point.
So tell us about your first year, man.
Yeah. So, you know, once I found that place, right? And so many of us who are listening right now know exactly what that place is and what those places are. And I choose not to fucking, you know, go into specifics about them. But my first year of recovery was fucking crazy, man. Like it was fucked up. Like it was some of the best times I've ever had in my life, but it was also some of the most confusing times of my life. And it was some of the most just, you know, like I tried to continue living with this dude from high school, like squatting on his couch for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months or something like that. And you know, I couldn't stop using, you know, not only that, but I literally was not willing. I could not find the willingness to fucking do what people told me. You know, these people who were like clean for a long time and like seemed to have like, you know, some happiness in their lives and some joy and some peace and all this stuff. And they're like, yeah, you got to do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do this. Right. And, you know, I'll do this thing. I don't know about this thing. And so, you know, and I'm still going to live with this guy who's using all the time in his own house. And, so yeah, needless to say, for the first 6 months, like I couldn't fucking stay clean for more than 30 days or something like that. But from that first meeting and from then on, like I found something there, you know, I found something in those rooms that like this sense of like acceptance, the sense of like I just belonged there, and I never fucking belonged anywhere in my whole life, man. Right? Like I never belonged in school. I never belonged in in those classes. I never belonged in fucking sports. I never belonged fucking anywhere in my own family. A lot of the times I just felt like I was the one who didn't belong. And so going in there and finding out that fuck, these people get me, whether they're tall, short, skinny, fat, black, white, fucking didn't matter, man. Like lawyers or fucking homeless, like they got me, man. They got how this thing worked. And it was just like this, like, wow. So my first year in recovery, I hung out with this dude a lot. He took me to yard sales a lot, and we laughed a lot, and we fucking hung out all the time. And he was the guy who showed me how to stay clean, right? Like it was him that when I was, you know, in those first, whatever it was, 3 or 4 months. And I was like, I looked at him one day and I said, man, why the fuck can't I stay clean? And he's like, or no, this is the funny. I said, why do I keep relapsing? And he's like, man, you haven't fucking relapsed. Like you have no recovery. You haven't done any work, right? You just show up here and you fucking hang out with people and you go for coffee and, oh yeah, you go to fucking 7 meetings a week, but you're not doing anything. You're not looking inside, right? You're not living by the fucking principles of this stuff. So then I just came to a point and I said, like, what do I got to do? And he told me, right? And it was fucking arduous, man. I almost said, told him to go fuck himself when he told me what I had to do, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing that he wanted me to do was write down from the first time I got loaded till the time I walked in. right? Till the time that I cleaned up, till that time. And I'm like, go fuck yourself, man. What do you want me to write a novel? 800 pages? And what I realize now, looking back on that, is like, it was the practice of like getting honest, man. It's the practice of like having willingness to sit down and fucking look at something instead of taking the easy way out, which was I did my whole life, right? And so I did that. And that, doing that work, sitting down and writing and getting honest with a fucking guy and actually telling him really what's going on and really why I, starting to look at why I did the shit that I did, starting to look at that stuff like the dad issues and the fucking, right. That was a big year for me. So, the next, and like, I'll tell you, I've been in recovery since 2007 and I don't have fucking 15 years clean. Right.
Did you stay out of relationships your first year?
Oh, fuck yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't.
No, I know.
No,
you
not
did,
at all.
But...
Yeah, no, not at all, man. And, I struggle with that today sometimes. Like when there's new guys coming in and there's new ladies coming in and it's like, you watch them hooking up and like, sometimes like knowing what I know now, like sometimes I just want to go over to them and be like, man, what the fuck are you doing? Right. But I sought so long for something. Right. And I thought I found that in dope and I always thought I had that in dope. And then, dope wasn't the fucking answer. And when I cleaned up, like I swear, man, I'm the only 12-year-old that I ever knew that was picturing his own wedding. Like, I swear to fucking God, like I wanted this big, like cathedral wedding. Like, and this is when I was like 12 years old. Right. I could see like the perfect woman. And so, there's a lot of like stigma around hooking up in the rooms and stuff. And I get it. There are predators there and shit like that. Right. Like this is a huge fucking issue with all of recovery. And I can tell you from my experience, right, that like the biggest thing I was fucking looking for was acceptance and love. And I just had no fucking clue how to go about it. I had no idea what love looked like. I had no idea what intimacy really was, what a relationship was supposed to fucking look like, and I fumbled around, man, for a long time. I did. Right. And, so that first year in recovery, I got 18 months clean. So that would be my first, I don't know, 2 years, a year and a half or whatever the fuck it was. And I got 18 months clean. And that's really a big part of kind of what took me out at that time. Right. Was that I wasn't willing to look at that stuff and I wasn't willing to do anything about that stuff. And so I ended up getting loaded and it was gross, man. It was it was a week and a half or something like that. And it was just, it was a bad relapse and my sponsor and I had a fucking falling out and whatever. And, so when I came back, I had learned a lot, but I still, I really struggled with that like conformity or willingness or whatever it is. So over the past 15 years, man, like, recovery has afforded me a lot of stuff. Like I told you, I got a girl pregnant when I was 17, right? And I had a daughter. Throughout my whole using, like I never fucking knew her, man. They moved away like to the Caribbean when she was 6 years old, and I had to like let the stepdad adopt her, and so I didn't see her, man. Right? Like I didn't see her, and I always thought I was just such a piece of shit for that, and that I chose that, and once the using gets bad enough, I realized that there's a lot of things that I don't really have a choice over anymore. Right? Like the dope is so strong. So, it's come to like, and I have a son too, right? That I had in Calgary. His name's Evan and he's 15 and my daughter's 23. And like, man, I'm in their fucking lives today. Right. Like, but that's only because at some point when people started telling me like, man, you and me, Sean, and fucking look at this, I stopped being like, go fuck yourself. And I started maybe saying, yeah, and then going home and thinking about that stuff, right? And actually like looking at that stuff. And I'll tell you, in the past 3 years, so about little over 3 years ago, I did some of this work, right? A big set of this work on this relationship stuff, because it followed me for so long, man. Like right, like I said, like 10 years in fucking recovery or even more, that I just couldn't figure it out. And I didn't seem to, I just fucking couldn't get it, man. And I still had it in my head that like that perfect girl is going to come and fucking save my life. Right. And it was just fucked. And so I did a lot of work on this stuff. And, you know, I'm in a relationship today that's lasted over 3 years. Right. Like, like it's like, to me, that's baffling, man. And a lot of people who know me, they're like, holy fuck. Right. And to some people it's like, oh, 3-year relationship. No big deal. But to me, man, right. Like that's like, I know what commitment looks like today. Right. Like I know what like intimacy looks like today. I know what that stuff looks like today. And it's only because I went inside, right? I went inside here and yeah, fuck man, today, like recovery's hard. Yeah, fucking life is hard. Relationships are fucking hard, man. Like some days, you know, I'm just tired after work and I'll yell and then I feel like a piece of shit. But today with recovery, I don't have to let that shit sit for, you know, like a week and a half. It's like, I can be like, hey man, you know, okay, I'm sorry. Right. Like I shouldn't do that. Or I can recognize stuff today. Right. And I don't know. There's no fucking world that I would ever say that I'm perfect in, that I have like come like, you know, 90% of the way. Like I joke sometimes about like, I used to be like, okay, maybe 30% of the time. And I was completely a fucked up asshole mess 70% of the time. And maybe now it's like 65-35, right? Whereas 65% of the time I'm okay, right? I can maybe look at some of this stuff, and 35% of the time I'm still kind of an asshole. I'm a self-centered piece of shit. But you know what, that sliding scale, but you know what, like, right? It took 27 years to fucking get here to get to a point where I could even identify that maybe I should fucking stop using drugs. And so, you know, and I think a lot of us are in that boat. And when I share about this stuff, I like to just, you know, I say to people like, just fucking take it easy, man. And there's a saying like, oh, my best day using, I wouldn't give up for my worst day clean. I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with it either. I'm so glad you fucking said that. I thought you were going to be like, I agree with that. And I was going to be like, that's a fucking terrible saying. I hate it.
Yeah. No, yeah. I've definitely come to like, you know, like, we get into mental health issues and stuff too, once we've been clean for a while. And, you know, a lot of that stuff can still fucking hit us, man, like a ton of bricks. Right. And it can be hard to decipher. Like, is this my addiction talking? Am I not in recovery? Like, you know what I mean? Or is it my mental health that's fucked up? And, so like, I will say one thing, like a day clean is a fucking win. Right. But I have come to points in recovery where I'm like, fuck, what's the point, man? Right. I'll just sit in the fucking garage with the car on and fucking leave it running. Cause if this is fucking life, but as far as that pendulum swings backwards, I've experienced shit in recovery that's just like mind blowing, man. Mind blowing. Right? Like the relationship that I have with my girlfriend today. Well, the relationship that I have with my girlfriend today is fucking like, is amazing, man. She loves me. She tells me that all the fucking time.
She doesn't.
Yeah. Seriously, man. She wants to like hold my hand and kiss me and like hang out with me all the time. And I'm like,
this is a G-rated show, bro. Take it easy.
You know, but I've experienced like road trips with people and like clean, right? And like, you know, camping clean. And sometimes I don't, you know, I think it's too much work or stuff, but at the end of the day, when I can look back on these experiences and I'm not like stumbling around and I don't forget fucking 3/4 of what happened. And I'm not like, oh man, I kicked the fucking dog again, didn't I? Like really hard. You know, like, oh, there's puke all over the fucking floor, man. Like, as hard as life can hit sometimes, if I take an objective, like I stand back and I breathe and I look at my life today, man, I got it fucking good. Right?
Yeah, man.
Like, I got it fucking good. Like, I got it so good today. There's talk with my girlfriend and I about like buying a house sometime in the semi near future. You know, like I've worked at the same fucking place and I quit, man. I've worked at the same place for over 7 fucking years, right? Like I went back to school. I became a journeyman mechanic all because of recovery. And as soon as I got a job out of school, I've been with that same fucking place for 7 years, man. I tried quitting and they're like, hey, do you want to come back? And that's not 100% because I'm so deadly, right? Yeah. Like that's because God affords me a good fucking life today, man. Yeah. That's because my higher power, whatever the fuck it is, creator that's up there, that's the universe, that's this like ultra deadly thing, like just, I got redeeming qualities today and I can identify those qualities. I can say that today without being a stuck up prick, right? Like saying, all right, I have this, like blah, blah, blah. Like, but I know my assets today. Right. And that's an amazing thing coming from living for so long, thinking that I was a useless piece of shit and that I had no redeeming qualities. Yeah. Right.
Speaking of dogs, you have a dog sitting there somewhere. You asked if you could bring her on, and that would be great if you did. Let's see Lucy.
Come here. Oh, she's like, yeah, I'll grab her.
Yeah. Got to get Lucy in here. Wouldn't be complete without her.
Oh. Look at this little pooch. Look at this little pooch. She's so cute.
Let's
Look
see.
at your ugly little face.
So how is
Say hi to the
Lucy?
People. She's good, man.
Yeah. How has she helped you in your recovery?
Oh, Lucy's been awesome. Like, I don't know. She's just like a little rock to me, right? Like I can fucking get annoyed with her or frustrated with her and tell her to go fucking lay down or whatever. And she's still, man, at the end of the day, she always comes back over and she still loves me. And, she taught me one thing that's kind of like I never took care of my kids, right? I kind of chuckle about that, but it's true, right? From the time they were born till they were however old, I never had that responsibility. And Lucy got sick a couple of years ago. Like she was really sick and we had to take her to the vet and all this stuff. And so, she's really showed me like, she's taught me how to, I don't really know exactly what the word is, but kind of be responsible for something else. Right. And I think that's huge, man. I always kind of liked plants and stuff and I could usually keep a plant alive, but, yeah. But I've kept her alive and I feed her and, I give her this little pill twice a day. She's pretty chill, man. She's, awesome. Well, except when people come over, then she's fucking crazy. But,
she's not too bad.
Yeah, she's a great little pup. No,
all
she's
right.
pretty cool.
Let's go into the viewer's voice and look at some comments and keep chatting. Okay, we've got Leanne Anderson. Leanne says, thanks so much for your message. I'm mom with a daughter who struggles with addiction sometimes. The guilt gets me. I needed to hear this. Right on, Leanne. Thanks for the comment.
Yeah, be strong.
Yeah. We've got Roseanne. Always nice to see you, Roseanne. Roseanne says, being a mom or person who loves someone who is struggling with addiction is so hard. I'm sure there's more than one person watching tonight that can agree with that. Let's see, what else do we got here? We've got Emmett. Emmett says, I've been accused of being a lot of things and a lot were true, but a genius has never been one. Shane, can you relate to that?
Nope.
And we've got Clint. Clint says, thank you so much, Shane. You are one of the coolest dudes I know. I have so much respect for you. I took a class with Clint last year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clint's a great guy, man. I like Clint.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because you're listening, Clint.
We've got Tanya. Nice to see you again, Tanya. Tanya says, getting real about the difference between stopping using and recovery is key. Much respect. We've got Andy Jane. Haven't seen her face for a while. Andy's saying, super proud of you, Shane. You've taught me more over the years than you'll ever know. And
Thanks.
we have Wendy Sabo. Good to see you tonight, Wendy. Wendy says, great message of honesty and willingness. Thank you, Shane. And Roseanne's coming in hot with the dog question. Is that a boxer?
She's a Frenchton, so she's a French bulldog and Boston Terrier.
Oh, let's see. Oh, look, we've got Dana. What's going on, Dana? Dana says, yes, Shane, we can be great parents in recovery to our dogs. It's live proving to ourselves we are capable. So proud of you. I think there's a typo in there, or maybe I just can't read.
Probably you, Dan. Probably you can't read.
It's probably me.
Yeah.
We've got Jill asking a question here. Jill says, sorry about the loss of your father. Did he have a problem with drugs?
Well, like every time I tell my story, I always have to like reiterate. So it's so fucking hard, man, with ADHD to like tell every little bit, right? And I know my dad today. I do. And like, here's part of the other part of the story. When I was 17, my mom comes up to me and says, you know what? Your dad might be this dude who's alive in Calgary. And sometimes I don't get to that part, right? Because it's so fucking big, that the other part. But I know my dad today. That dude who killed himself, his name was Ralph. And yeah, he had a problem with drugs. Absolutely.
But he wasn't your biological father?
He wasn't.
Okay.
No, I'm a product of 79, right? Like, so it was a fucked up situation, right? And
oh, okay.
Well, it's 1979, man. There wasn't a whole lot of like, it was kind of like you have a one thing and you don't expect anything came from it. I don't know.
Okay. We got another question coming. Claudia, thank you for the comment. Claudia asks, how is the relationship with your mom now?
She comes into the city every Sunday to watch me curl. And my girlfriend and I go out there and we watch curling with her, and I hang out with her. We go for lunch. She's great, right? I have a great relationship with my mom today, and we can talk about just about anything. Like today, if I'm going through stuff or I'm thinking about buying a house or buying a car or things like that, I call my mom, right? And so that's the kind of relationship we have. It's great.
Hang on a sec. Oh, we've got lots of comments coming in.
Oh, wow.
Roseanne. Yeah, Roseanne's asking, what are your thoughts today of when your mom was telling you to leave?
Gratitude. 100% gratitude. When she told me to get the fuck out of her house, best thing she ever did for me. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine. Like, I'm not even going to sit here and try and roll on with the story if she would have let me stay there, right?
Yeah.
It likely would have been disastrous.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think they're dying down. Let me see. We've got Eleanor saying, thank you so much for your honesty and sharing. Oh, Andy Jane says she moved to Alberta last year. She's still going strong and staying clean. Right on, Andy.
Good job, Andy.
Yeah. So, Shane, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with tonight?
Yeah, I'll say, I'll reiterate what I said at the start, man. If you're struggling and for some reason that part of your brain is telling you, nothing's going to fucking work for me, I can guarantee you, I can promise you that there's a fucking way out, and that there's a better way to live than using and sitting in fucking basements and getting fucked up. There's a way better way to live. And I've seen it proven over and over and over and over and over again. So,
well, we're both sitting here, aren't we?
Yeah, man. Reach out,
Cool,
ask
man.
for help.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And we'll let you go, my friend.
Cool. Thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah, man. Take care. There's power in numbers. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitch, Facebook, and Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We can recover. There is a safer way, and we're here to show you how. Good night.